I never thought the person who would betray me the most was not a stranger or a business rival, but my own sibling. My name is Nora, and this is the story of how the person I trusted most tried to steal my dream, business. But instead of walking away defeated, I found the sweetest form of revenge. It started with a dream, a very simple dream. For as long as I can remember, I wanted to build something of my own, not just a small side project, but a real business that reflected who I was, my creativity, my work ethic, and my belief that even the smallest idea can grow into something beautiful. My parents never believed in it. They wanted me to play it safe, take a normal job, and stop wasting time chasing what they called fantasies. But I refused to give up. My younger brother Evan was different, or so I thought. When I first shared my idea with him, he smiled, listened, and even encouraged me. He said, "Nora, you have always had the heart of an entrepreneur. You can do this." Those words meant everything at the time, because when your own family does not support you, even one person standing by your side feels like the world. I spent years saving up money, working odd jobs and sketching out business plans late into the night. Every step felt impossible, but I told myself it would be worth it. Eventually, I opened my first small store. It was nothing glamorous, just a tiny space with peeling paint and mismatched shelves. But to me, it was a palace. It was mine. At first, things were rough. Some days, not a single customer came through. The door, I stood behind the counter, staring at the empty aisle, wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. Other days, I sold just enough to keep the lights on. I remember crying in the storage room one night, my head in my hands, thinking, what if they were right? What if I really cannot do this? But then something changed. Word of mouth began to spread. People liked what I was offering. My store slowly became part of the community. Customers returned, bringing their friends. My little idea started to grow like a seed, finally catching sunlight, and with each passing month, I felt more confident. That is when Evan suddenly became more interested. He started dropping by the shop more often, asking questions about sales expenses and future plans. At first, I thought it was sweet that he cared. He even offered to help stock shelves, greet customers, and run errands. I let him in because he was my brother and I trusted him. What I did not know was that Evan was not helping me out of love. He was studying me, watching every detail, learning how I managed things, and most importantly, looking for ways to get ahead of me. I remember one conversation so vividly. We were sitting in the back of the shop eating takeout after a long day. I told him, one day I want to expand. Not just this one shop, I want to open more locations, maybe even create a brand. People recognize. He nodded, but there was a flicker in his eyes I did not notice. At the time, almost like a spark of greed. The months rolled by and business kept improving. By the end of that year, I had saved enough to seriously think about opening a second location. It was the proudest moment of my life. For the first time, I felt like my dream was real, not just something I whispered to myself in the dark. But around that same time, Evan's behavior began to change. He became secretive, taking phone calls outside and hiding details from me. He stopped volunteering to help at the store and instead asked more pressing questions about finances. One night, curiosity got the better of me. While he was in the kitchen, I glanced at his open notebook on the table. What I saw made my stomach twist. Inside were sketches, plans, and notes almost identical to mine. My ideas, my strategies, even my timeline for expansion, written in his handwriting. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. It was as if he had copied my brain. I confronted him that night. "Evan, what is this? Why do you have all of my plans written down like they are yours?" He did not even flinch. Instead, he smirked and said, "Business is business, Nora. You are too soft to make it big. You will always be stuck in a little store. I am going to take this idea further than you ever could." My heart sank. This was my brother, the same person who once cheered me on, who promised he believed in me. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. The betrayal did not stop there. Within weeks, Evan had somehow secured investors. He used my very own strategies to pitch a new business idea, claiming it was his creation. My jaw nearly hit the floor when I learned that he was opening a store just 3 blocks away from mine. When the grand opening came, I forced myself to walk past his new location. Bright banners, glossy shelves, and a crowd of customers lined up. Outside, it was everything. I had dreamed of but built on lies and theft. The worst part, my parents showed up to support him. They stood at the front, smiling and clapping like proud cheerleaders. The same parents who once mocked me for chasing this dream now praised Evan for being bold. I stood there across the street clutching my bag so tightly, my knuckles turned white. Rage burned inside me, but so did heartbreak. That night, I cried harder than I had in years. Every ounce of trust I had left in my family shattered, but even in the middle of my despair, I whispered one promise to myself: this is not the end. I will not let him win. And that was the beginning of my plan. I thought losing my brothers. Trust was painful enough, but watching him steal my dream and parade it as his own was unbearable. Every day his new store seemed busier, louder, more glamorous. People who once walked into my shop now crossed the street to his, and now every time I saw his smug face in front of that store, shaking hands with customers and investors, it was like a knife twisting deeper in my chest. The betrayal was not quiet either. Evan rubbed it in at every opportunity. He would walk into my shop, lean against the counter, and say things like, "You should really update this. Place Nora customers like a modern touch. Maybe you should come check out my store for inspiration." The arrogance in his tone made me want to scream, but I did not. Instead, I stayed quiet. I listened. I observed, because anger can make you reckless. But silence can be powerful. My parents did not make things easier. They bragged about Evan at family dinners, telling relatives how ambitious he was, how successful he was becoming. When they turned to me, they would say things like, "You should learn from your brother. Maybe you would be doing better if you thought bigger." They did not realize I was already thinking bigger, much bigger than Evan ever could. One night, I sat in my small office staring at the numbers sales were dropping. The competition was fierce. Investors were ignoring me, flocking to Evan instead. By all appearances, I was losing, but deep down I knew something he might have copied my ideas, but he did not have my heart. He did not have my resilience. That was the night I decided to rebuild. Not just my store, but myself. I started taking business courses online, staying up late into the night to learn strategies, marketing, and finance. I saved every extra penny, cutting back on everything. No vacations, no fancy dinners, not even small luxuries. I poured everything into growth. Slowly, my efforts paid off. I launched a small online store alongside my physical shop, reaching customers far beyond my neighborhood. It started slow, but then orders began trickling in, then hundreds, then thousands. I was exhausted running on coffee and stubbornness, but for the first time in months, I felt alive. Meanwhile, Evan was flying too. Close to the sun, he expanded too quickly, opening multiple locations without proper management. Investors loved his flashy personality, but they did not see the cracks forming underneath. His employees were unhappy, his costs skyrocketed, and his arrogance blinded him to the storm brewing ahead. I, on the other hand, kept working in silence. No announcements, no boasting, just steady growth. My online store took off, and soon I had enough to quietly open a new location. Not 3 blocks away from him this time. I chose a prime spot downtown where traffic was high and demand was endless. The opening was simple, nothing flashy. But within weeks, customers poured in. They loved the authenticity, the care, the personal touch I put into everything. Unlike Evan, I was not chasing quick money. I was building trust. Months passed, and while Evan was busy plastering his face on billboards, I was quietly expanding. One store turned into 2. Then 3. My online sales became a backbone, funding everything I needed. My brand was no longer just a shop. It was a name people recognized and trusted. But I still kept quiet, because the sweetest revenge is not served loud. It is served in silence until the moment it is undeniable. Of course, Evan did not notice. He was too busy throwing parties, showing off his cars, and bragging to our parents about how he was leading the industry. Every time I heard him talk like that, I bit my tongue, because I knew what was coming. Then came the day I had been waiting for. My lawyer called with the news: an opportunity to acquire a controlling stake in Evan's company. He had overextended himself, taken too many loans, and investors were pulling out. His once shiny empire was crumbling, and he did not even know it yet. I signed the papers without hesitation. In one stroke of a pen, I became the majority owner of the very business my brother had stolen from me. The irony was too sweet. He had mocked me, betrayed me, and tried to erase me. But in the end, his greed handed me the keys to his empire. I did not tell anyone right away. I wanted to savor the moment, to plan the reveal carefully, because sometimes justice is not just about winning. It is about showing the people who doubted you that you were never weak, never small, and never destined to fail. And so I waited for the perfect moment to reveal the truth. But before I share what happened next, I want to pause here and say this: if you are listening right now, never let betrayal define you. Never let the people who laugh at your dreams convince you to give up. Stay silent, stay focused, and let your success speak louder than their doubt. And while you are here, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to Mortal Revenge, because stories like mine remind us all that karma has a way of coming full circle. Back to Evan. The reveal happened on a day I will never forget. He had called for a staff meeting at his main office, trying to boost morale as things began. To slip, the room was full of employees, investors, even our parents, because of course he wanted to show off. He stood at the front, grinning like always, trying to convince everyone that everything was fine. And then I walked in. The room went silent. Evan's grin faltered. He stuttered, "Nora, what are you doing here?" I smiled, calm and collected. "I am here because as of today, I own this company. Every branch, every asset, everything you thought was yours now belongs to me." Gasps filled the room. My parents' faces went pale. Evan looked like the ground had disappeared beneath him. For once he had nothing to say, and in that silence, I felt something I had not felt in years: peace. But my story did not end there, because revenge is sweet, but the aftermath is even sweeter. The silence in that office was deafening. Evan's face turned red, his mouth opening and closing like he was searching for words but finding none. My parents exchanged confused glances as if they could not process what I had just said, and then one of the investors, a tall man in a dark suit, stood up and said, "She is right. Nora is now the majority shareholder. She owns this company." The room erupted. Employees whispered. Some looked relieved, others looked shocked. And Evan, he looked destroyed. "Impossible." He spat out, "This is my company. I built it from the ground up." I raised my chin and replied calmly, "No, Evan, you built it on stolen ideas. You used my plans, my vision, my work. You might have fooled people for a while, but you could not fool the truth forever, and now all of it has come back to me." For the first time, the arrogance in his eyes melted away, replaced by fear. He tried to argue, but his voice cracked. "Mom, Dad, tell her she cannot do this. Tell her she has no right." But my parents were speechless. They had spent years praising him, dismissing me, and mocking my efforts. Now they were staring at undeniable proof that the daughter they had overlooked had outsmarted them all. I turned to the crowd and said, "Starting today, things will change. This company will no longer run on lies and shortcuts. We are going to rebuild, trust, treat employees with respect and honor the customers who gave us their loyalty." I may not have been the loudest person in the room, but I have always been the most determined. Applause broke out. Not from everyone, but enough. I saw relief on the employees' faces. They were tired of Evan's empty promises. They wanted stability. They wanted real leadership. Evan stormed out of the room, slamming the door so hard the glass shook. My parents followed after him, calling his name, but I did not chase them. I did not need their approval anymore. That day I had reclaimed everything that mattered to me. In the weeks that followed, the truth spread quickly. People learned how Evan had stolen my ideas, how he had betrayed me, and how his greed had nearly destroyed the company. His reputation crumbled. Investors stopped taking his calls. Friends distanced themselves. The very spotlight he craved turned into a harsh glare that exposed every flaw. As for me, I worked harder than ever. I reorganized the business, closed the failing branches, and rebuilt the brand on honesty and quality. Sales soared, and soon the company was more successful than it had ever been under Evan. Customers trusted me because they knew I cared. Employees respected me because I treated them like people, not tools. One afternoon, months later, Evan showed up at my office. His once polished suit was wrinkled, his confidence gone. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in spirit. He sat down across from me and muttered, "I just wanted what you had, Nora. I thought if I could take it, I would finally feel like I mattered." I looked at him, my heart heavy. "Evan, you could have built something of your own. You could have worked with me, but you chose betrayal, and that choice has consequences." He lowered his eyes for the first time. He did not argue. He did not insult me. He just sat there broken, and in that moment, I realized something. Important revenge is not about destroying the other person. It is about reclaiming your power. And I had already done that. I did not need to humiliate him further. I did not need to drag him through the mud. The truth had already done that for me. Instead, I said, I hope one day you learn that taking shortcuts never leads to real success. I hope you find your own path, because this one, it was never yours to begin with. He left without another word, and that was the last time I saw him. My parents eventually reached out trying to mend things, but the wounds ran deep. I was not cruel, but I did not let them back into my life the way they wanted. I had built something stronger than their approval I had built. My own family through friends, employees and customers who believed in me. People who stood by me not because of blood, but because of loyalty. Years later, when I looked back on it all, I realized that betrayal had been the best thing that ever happened to me. It hurt. Yes, it broke me in ways I cannot fully describe, but it also pushed me to grow, to fight harder, to become the person I was always meant to be. And so if you take anything from my story, let it be this. Never let someone else's doubt define your worth. Never let betrayal be the reason you give up. Instead, let it fuel you, let it shape you. Let it be the fire that turns you into something unstoppable. Because at the end of the day, the sweetest revenge is not seeing your enemy fall. The sweetest revenge is standing tall, unshaken, while they realize they never truly had the power to break you. And that is exactly what I did.